Hey everybody, welcome again to another video, and this video is going to be about watercolor pencils. So we've been working on watercolors this month, and I do have a giveaway. Every month or so I have giveaways, and this one is watercolor themed, so go check out that link. All my giveaways have their own playlist, and you have to watch every video in that playlist to enter the giveaway. You have to watch every video, leave a comment on each video, give a thumbs up or thumbs down on each video, and you have to be subscribed to me. And keep in mind that when you watch a video and you've watched all the videos previous to that, there can still be some for me to upload that need to be watched for you to enter the giveaway. So you do want to click the little notification bell so that you don't miss any videos. And I just make it really easy. You just, to make sure you've watched all the videos for that specific giveaway that you want to enter, you just go to that playlist. So let's get on with this. So this is about watercolor pencils. So I'm going to just give a little bit of a disclaimer. I don't often use watercolor pencils, especially when I'm painting flowers, although we are going to be painting a flower in this video. Well, we're going to be drawing a flower with watercolor pencils and then activate that pigment. Usually my flowers are very loose, and that's quite hard to get with watercolor pencils. When I do use watercolor pencils, it is to kind of help with details in my faces, you know, some watercolor portraits, and possibly sometimes when I paint animals, and maybe when I do flowers, although I can't actually think of a time when I've used it for flowers. So just letting you know that it's not my strongest area of watercolor, but I do have some watercolor pencils here. So this is a set I just picked up. It is florals, and I just found it at HomeSense in Canada. I don't think you have HomeSense. I think you have Marshalls, which is the same thing. And this is all kind of flower colors. And so there's no greens in there, so I'm going to have to use some. So I haven't used these really. These are Spectrum Noir. And these are just new. Most of the watercolor pencils I've had that I've used previously are my Derwent. So these are all the Derwent ones. I can't remember. I think it's like 72. And it does come in a big, long tin. I don't know where that tin is. I didn't throw it away, but... so that's what I have. And then I have some other ones that are Artist Loft brand, and not that one, the Generals brand. Let's show you here. And so these are Generals Kimberly's watercolor. I got them at Michael's as well as the Artist Loft, because Artist Loft is Michael's brand. What I've done here is I have put kind of my favorite colors and whatever. This is kind of a set we bring for my daughter when we go travel or on a plane for a long flight, and I have them swatched out here, and then she can I make her a little travel watercolor journal, and she can just kind of draw and activate, and just kind of something fun to do. And so I have that. But we're not really going to be using any of those. What I will say is that they are definitely fine to start with if you want to do some watercolor pencils. And if you just kind of want to see how you like it, these are a very affordable way to go, especially if you're using a coupon. So this is nothing wrong with these. I would say that the Derwent and these Spectrum ones are a little bit better, higher quality. And just a little bit more pigmented, and maybe a little bit less scratchy, they're just more smooth. And then to compare the Derwent and the Spectrum, what I have used so far, I don't notice a whole difference in the pigment. Maybe the Spectrum ones are a little bit more higher quality. But what I love is, I love how these feel in my hand. They feel so much nicer than these ones do. It's just my personal preference. It's completely just my own opinion. I just like that these are round for some reason. And I like, I always like it when there's colors on the edge so you can really see. And plus the names of these are all flowers, which is awesome. That could be annoying because you do sometimes want to know the technical color of the pigment, but for my purposes, well, I don't care. So right now, I just want to show you a few different things that you can do with just a few different techniques that you can do with watercolor pencils. So when I talk about watercolor pencils, I am not talking about crayons. So that is a whole nother thing. So I have a video, I'll put a link to that coming across the right there. But we are not talking about water-soluble markers or crayons. We are talking about water-soluble watercolor pencils, okay? So what I'm just going to show you is we'll take this plum red. So I guess they're not all named after colors. Let me see, is this a good color to use? Okay, so when you, and this actually applies to normal pencil crayons too. If you use them, you know, regularly like this, many times, like you would write with a pen or a pencil, this will kind of put marks into the paper. It will create a little indent in the paper. And you don't necessarily want that. There might be times when you do actually, and it'll kind of do an effect that you might want, but generally you don't want that. So if I'm going like this, then I'm holding it like a normal pencil. But if I go like this, I can get a much softer look, and it'll be a whole different thing when I go to put some water on it. So here, let's just do this. Watercolor pencils in general, especially the cheaper ones, the line that you put down will stay there. You'll be able to drag some color away from it, but the line that you originally make, like you can see my name, is not going to move. There might be some instances where you can move it more than others. Well, there's definitely some pigments that move more than others and some watercolor pencils, but in general, you're not going to be able to do that. So here we have this. There's quite a bit of pigment there. So we'll just let that dry. And then we'll do this. So you can't, I'm not sure if you can see or not. I'm just going to zoom in. So you can still see the marks where I scribbled in like this. But with this, it's not as obvious. It's still there, but it's not as obvious. And so it's really, you really want to be able to get on the side, and you can kind of use the side here and do some circular motions. The other thing you don't want to do is you don't want to, you know, do something like this and then, oh, I got to color this way, I'm going to color that way, because that will show and it won't look very good. Let's just brush this all the same way so you can see that. And it doesn't look good. And then, of course, when you use it on the smooth side or rough side, and how rough the paper is and how smooth the paper is, that will have an effect as well. But you can see, like, that just doesn't look good right there. All right, so you do want to try to get used to holding the pencil like this. And you can kind of, I don't hold it like a paintbrush. I kind of use it with my whole hand like this. And that's the same way I use pencil crayons, because I find if I'm doing this, it just puts an indent into the paper that you just can't get out. And of course, you know, even with watercolor pencils, you want to use 140-pound paper. I never suggest anything below 140-pound watercolor paper, not 140-pound mixed media paper, 140-pound watercolor paper. So if I am putting together a journal or doing anything that is mixed media, and I know I might be using, or it's possible, I don't know if I will or not, and definitely if I am sure that I'm going to be using any kind of water soluble and putting any kind of water on it, I will go with watercolor paper rather than mixed media paper, because the watercolor paper will take anything I put at it, but the mixed media paper will only take certain things. So I know mixed media paper says for wet and dry medium, but it's not going to react in a watercolor way that you want to. That being said, I do have some mixed media paper that I use for, like collage pieces maybe, and for demonstration, for swatching, but for my art journals, I always use watercolor paper, because then I know no matter what, you know, what if I say, okay, no, I'm just doing mixed media, I'm not doing any water soluble media on here, and then I do it, and then I see my, you know, my art takes a certain direction, and then I find, oh, I really want to use watercolor on here, and I want to use quite a bit. I can try, but it might kind of not work out, and I may have wrecked something that I really love. So if I have watercolor paper, 140-pound minimum watercolor paper, I don't have to worry about that. So I always err on the side of watercolor paper. And then if I just use mixed media on it and don't use any water soluble, I'm still totally good. Okay, let's show you something else here. So another thing that you can do with pencils is you can take your brush and basically use this like you would a pan of watercolor. So you want to make sure you get some water on there. I've got quite a bit. And then you can, and of course then you won't have to worry about lines with it. It's kind of a pain because, you know, you just have this little tip, but it's handy to have when you just want to do some brush work and you don't want to use your pencil crayon. And you've got a nice smooth, and then you can always add some more water to that. And that is just like using a watercolor tube or watercolor pan. The other thing you can do, and we will be doing a little bit of this when we get to painting a flower, is you can dip it right into the water and you get a really nice line for a little bit. Now this line won't move too much. I'm not pushing hard. You never want to push too hard, and you can notice I'm holding it like that just to show you, but see that line is still there. Okay, so let's so if we go like this, we can fill in, you know, a decent area here. And, you know, if this is all just a little area that we're filling in, we can just leave it like that. And we don't have to worry about lines because we're not really trying to move that water out. And then we can just drop some in there to just, some water in there just to make it varied a little bit. And then we can even go in there with some purple and mix it up a little bit. So now that is going to stay there. So you just have to be aware about what the different things will do. Okay, so that is kind of a really cool effect that I actually end up using quite a bit when I want to fill in little spots. And it's nice because the pencils give you just this nice little tip that you can just work in. You have to keep kind of going back to the water and dipping it in. It might be a good idea to just have a little well of water that you can go to rather than your whole cup, but that's, you know, up to you. So there's that. The other thing is you can splatter with your crayon as well. I want to get it nice and wet. It might be good to use a brush for this. So you can do this, splatter like that, you can splatter like that. So of course you can even splatter with pencil crayons or watercolor crayons, excuse me. But again, with watercolor pencils, you want to build it up just like you do with any watercolor. And we're gonna show you a little bit of that. Or I'm gonna show you a little bit of that. Nobody's here with me. Well, my dog Archie is. I want to show you first how you can do a background. Just gonna zoom out here. So we're just gonna do like a fun little background that you could use in a mixed media piece. You could use as a background for some more watercolors, like I've shown you in different watercolor videos I have all these little papers that I use, and I just sometimes when I don't know what to do or I'm not feeling inspired, I'll just throw different watercolor paints on here, and I get some really cool washes, and then I dig them out however long after, and then I start painting something on here. This one I actually have an idea of what I want to paint on there, and I should probably do that for a video for you this month. So we can do that same thing with watercolor pencils. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm just wanting to figure out, I think I might want a little turquoise. Okay, and then just for kicks, I'm going to put some ultramarine. Is that what I want to use? I think so. What do we got here? Spectrum blue. Now let's try the spectrum blue. So I'm going to grab my X-Acto knife, if I can find it, and I'm going to sharpen this. And you could just collect the sharpenings in a little container, or you don't have to. I mean, maybe that's too much work for you. Whenever I do things like this, people are like, and no thanks, I am not going to be bothered to do that. So then let's just see what we get when we activate it. I am just going to use, well, I'm going to use this. I was thinking about using something bigger, but so you want to mix some of these colors for sure, but you also want to make sure that they're not too mixed so that it's just one color. You want some of these colors to stay within their boundaries a little bit. And you can see those blue shavings are kind of coming out, and they make little specks. So this could be used for lots of different things, or, you know, just as kind of, those specks can just be kind of an abstract little aspect to your piece, or they could be pollen. You could, we'll do that actually next. I'm going to do some yellow, some contrasting. And I am brushing in the direction of my same strokes. It's not terribly important to brush in the same direction that you colored in, but it's more of a thing to color in the same direction. And so some of these strokes are definitely staying in there, and you can go in there and move some of them around a little bit, and they will move, but lots of them will just stay there. And then we can just splash some water on there to make it so it's not so uniform. So we want to mix, because we don't want it to look like strokes. We want it to look like just this nice kind of marbled effect. And then let's just sharpen some of this yellow on here. And look at, so my paper's quite wet, as you can see, because it's folded. which that doesn't bother me. Some people would tape it down, but I tape down watercolor for my portraits, but I don't usually tape it down for flowers. But in this case, you might want to, because you want to distribute these. So that makes a really cool effect. You could spray it as well if you want to cut some of those out. And then you have a really cool background that you can do, you know, whatever with. And this will work as well to use some saran wrap on. So we could put some saran wrap, let's do it this way. There, and these can be, I don't know, some different colored leaves. I just want to see, I'm doing it in the opposite direction. I'm not sure why. I just, you know, sometimes get these ideas and just to try, see what that looks like. And maybe it's best to do it in the same direction that I did it in, but I want to try it this way. And then we're going to see how that will work. So if you haven't seen this, I have a few videos where I have done it. And what happens is the water, it just pools under there. And then it dries like that, so it doesn't escape, and it dries more intense in other areas, in some of those areas. The other thing you can do is add some salt. Now you have to make sure it's quite wet, because it won't work if it's not very wet. So this is already probably a little bit too dry to try this, but in this area should work. And I'm going to do this in another video as well to expand more on that video, on that technique. So we're going to leave this, and I'm going to show it to you later. So you can see that there's just some subtle little shapes in there. And you can use this saran wrap in different ways. And I'll go over that in another video. But yeah, this can really help with leaves and any kind of texture to use the saran wrap. And then with the salt, because I put it on, it had kind of dried. You really need to put the salt on there right away. You can see a few little texture spots, but not a whole lot, just because it wasn't too wet when I did it. But I'll be doing that in some more videos as well.